The proceeding will start shortly. 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 The proceeding will start shortly.
I have to acquaint the House that Her Majesty, having been informed of the resignation of the Right Honourable John Bercow, lately Speaker of this House, gives leave to the House to proceed forthwith to the election of a new Speaker.
Accordingly, the House will now proceed to the election of a new Speaker in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order number 1B. Now, in a moment, I'll call the candidates to address the House in the order which I drew by lot this morning. But the order of speaking has been published this morning and has been visible on the annunciator, I think, to all members, but it's purely random. I've asked each candidate to speak for no more than 5 minutes. The candidates will no doubt be further advised by that response. When all candidates have addressed the House, we will proceed to the first ballot. So I call. Thank you very much. Dame Rosie Winterton.
Mr Clarke, I'm sure that all the other candidates in the election today will agree with me when I say that none of us can match the experience that you have in this place or the esteem in which you are held. Yeah. You're leaving us after half a century of service, and we thank you for that service. Yeah. But others are leaving in part because of what our politics has become. As the House is the crucible of our politics, that should concern us all. It's why the role of Speaker matters so much. I'm putting myself forward after 22 years of diverse experience as a backbencher, a government minister, shadow leader of the House, chief whip and deputy speaker. Restoring public confidence in Parliament is all our responsibility, but the Speaker sets the tone. My view is the Speaker's job is not to dominate proceedings or speak for Parliament, but to facilitate debate and allow Parliament to speak for itself, with all its different voices and in all its diverse voices. Mr Clarke, during my time as Opposition Chief Whip, I worked with the majority and minority parties to build consensus where we could, and I made sure we didn't fall out when we couldn't agree. As Deputy Speaker, I've been struck by the fact that in so many of our debates there is consensus, members from different parties working together to find common ground. Of course, there will always be times when the House will be rumbustious. That's fine. What the public doesn't like is ill temper and intolerance. Yeah. The turbulent time in our politics has put this institution and all of us under great strain. The executive must order. The executive. That That wasn't a set-up, I promise you. The executive must be allowed to carry out its mandate where it is given by the people. But MPs must also be allowed to scrutinise legislation and hold the government to account. The Speaker has a crucial role in getting that balance right. If there is a logjam, the Speaker should help Parliament to find a way through. Bring parties together to solve the problem. In all the posts I have held, I have been a conciliator. As Speaker, I would douse the flames, not pour petrol on them. A stabilising, unifying Speaker. A Speaker from the North, so the public see Parliament is about the whole country and not just London. And the last woman from the North did a pretty good job. To gain respect from the public, we must show each other respect. The next Speaker must lead by the example she sets, changing the tone and lowering the temperature when the House gets overheated. As Deputy Speaker, I've tried to do that. I hope members feel I've been impartial, not impatient. As Deputy Speaker, I have seen tempers rise if there's too much disruption of business. Urgent questions are an important innovation of our last Speaker. But I've seen members become frustrated, having worked hard on a speech, only to end up being squeezed by a 3-minute time limit. Urgent business must be debated when it's urgent, but UQs and statements should not take hours. Neither should PMQs. If a member doesn't get called, they should get priority next time. And newer members should not always have to wait till last to be called. All our constituencies have the same right to be heard. Mr Clarke, Parliament should be a workplace free from bullying and harassment. The Commission must be at the centre of changing the culture of Parliament. It should be accessible to members and to staff, and IPSA should stop getting in the way of members doing their jobs. MPs who are parents or have caring responsibilities need proper support. We must become a modern, family-friendly workplace. Mr Clarke, my dad was a head teacher in Doncaster, and I bump into people he taught all the time. He's remembered not as a fierce disciplinarian, but as someone who was fair, encouraging and trusted. Not a bad legacy. My ambition as Speaker would be to follow his example, not seek the limelight, but build trust.
Thank you very much, Dame Rosie. Chris Bryant.
Mr Clarke, politics can be cruel. A young lad came up to me in Tonopandi the other day. He couldn't quite place who I was, but he knew he'd seen me somewhere, maybe on telly. So I said, well, maybe it's because I'm the MP for the Rhondda. And he said, no, that's Chris Bryant. And he's much younger than you. Just for the record, I am 57, older than John Bercow. Politics has felt, I think, however, especially cruel in the last few years. Many of us feel battered and bruised. Many of the public feel that Parliament has been a bit of a bear pit. But you speak as you find, and my own personal experience from earlier this year, when I was wandering around looking like I was auditioning for the part of the monster in Frankenstein, was that actually there are untold, countless moments of personal, enormous generosity in this House. And most of the country will be enormously proud of the way we do our business, if only they knew. The truth is, politics is an honourable profession. Every single one of us in this House entered politics because we wanted to change the world for the better. And often the individual campaigns that we run touch millions of lives. Just think of the campaign to get Brineura for children with Batten disease. Think of the work that's been done on getting an inquiry on contaminated blood, or for that matter on children's funerals, or on people trafficking. So many different campaigns, and the one I dedicated myself to on acquired brain injury and melanoma. That's why it's so important that we revitalise and stand up for parliamentary democracy and return to the rule book, stitch it back together. I'm standing because I love Parliament, I believe in parliamentary democracy, and I want to do things properly. That means being a Speaker who has absolutely no favourites, a Speaker who believes in standing by the rules, somebody who is completely impartial, who knows Erskine May inside out and back to front. I've got it lying by my bedside. A Speaker... All right. A Speaker who is an umpire, not a player. This is one of the most demanding jobs in British politics. For centuries it was said it could only really be done by a top-rate lawyer. And that's because the decisions that are made by the Speaker are of constitutional significance. You have to be quick on your feet, you have to be able to defend the decision and explain it in plain English. There are things I want to do. I want to get Prime Minister's questions back to 30 minutes. I want to publish a speaking list for debate so that you know when you'll be called. And if you don't get called today, you will get called first tomorrow. I want to call colleagues according to their relevance to the subject, rather than some idea of seniority. I want to stop the clapping. No! Yes, very funny. Can we return to waving the order papers? That's the traditional way. And for that matter, I want to stop the hectoring and the addresses to the gallery. I want to make sure every single MP, their families and, importantly, their staff are safe in their constituency office and in their homes. I want to make the timing of the parliamentary day more predictable. I want to increase the Human Resources Department. And I want to no, I don't just want to, I will sort out the Wi-Fi and the mobile signal. Let me end with three speakers from the past. The first is Betty Boothroyd, who, when she stood for Speaker, said she said, I hope you will vote for me for who I am, not who I was born. Now, I was taught as a child not to judge somebody according to the colour of their skin, their religion, their gender, their sexuality, what school they went to, what accent they speak with, or what part of the country they're from, but according to the strength of their character and whether they could do the job well. I hope you will all judge me in exactly the same way today. Second speaker, Speaker Onslow, who in the 18th century said, and he was the first Speaker to say this, I will be respectful and impartial to all. That will be my motto. And most famously of all, the Speaker you all know, I guess, Speaker Lenthal, who told Charles I, I have neither eyes to see nor tongue to speak in this place, but as this House is pleased to direct me, whose servant I am. Whose servant I am. That is all I ask, the chance to serve.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. Sir Edward Lee.
Mr. Clarke, what an honour to stand for this particular job. Like all those standing, I love this place, I only wish to serve it. And I think that it's a pretty good training to be Speaker, to have been, as I have been, a backbencher for 33 out of the last 36 years. Although, to be absolutely honest, nobody asked me to serve any longer on the front bench. One of the reasons why I think many people enjoy their service on the backbenches is they love holding the government to account, in being sincere to their beliefs, however unpopular those beliefs are. And that's the sort of backbencher that I want to encourage. So that's enough of me. Just a moment to talk about what I believe the Speaker should be. I'm with Chris and Rosie on this. I think the Speaker should submerge his or her character in the job. The Speaker should be the servant of the House. The Speaker should be a dignified and quiet voice. And I believe that all the candidates standing today can achieve that. I believe in this Parliament that we should not be contemptuous of what we've achieved over the last 3 years. Insults have been hurled on us, but Chris mentioned our famous forebear and how he, as our Speaker, made clear that he only was a servant of the House. And I think that we, who sit in the House, should be proud of what we've achieved over the last 3 years as the cockpit of the political nation, where every point of view can be heard, debated and thrashed out. And I believe that we can make this place even better. I believe that it's no accident that the great speeches in history in our place were precisely that, speeches. They were not interminable, self-regarding points of intervention or points of order or statements going on forever. I believe that we should recreate the great debates in this place and allow adequate time and be fair to everybody, so that everybody gets a fair crack of the whip, literally, to put their point of view. So I think that we can actually go from strength to strength. But this place is not just about words, important as they are, not just about votes. It's also about a sense of history and a sense of place. And I particularly wanted to stand this election to make this point, that we must preserve this World Heritage Site, but we must preserve it in a way, and here I speak as somebody who served as 18 years as chairman of the Public Accounts Committee and Commission. We must preserve it in such a way that we look after the interests of our paymasters, the taxpayers. We cannot waste billions of pounds. We have to do the job properly, but we have to do it right. And my personal view, and you've all received a letter from SAVE, the Architectural Association, which proves that we can do the job cheaply, efficiently, with the erection of a temporary chamber, rather than demolishing Richmond House and wasting billions of pounds. So I particularly wanted to make that point, because we do have a duty of care in terms of money to our constituents. So those are my priorities, ensuring that once again this place can be the forum of great speeches, determined and sincere speeches. And I want to end by saying that nobody here should worry about what they've done or what they've achieved in recent years. Be of good heart, be of good cheer, and above all, dear friends, hold the executive to account, whoever they are. Be sincere to your beliefs, because that is what this place is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Edward. Dame Eleanor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Clarke. When I was growing up in the small village of Elderslie in the west of Scotland, who would have thought that little Eleanor from across the road would one day end up standing to be the Speaker of the House of Commons? Certainly I didn't. It's a great testament to our country and to our democracy that this moment is even possible. Can I begin, Mr. Clarke, by paying tribute to you? On this, your last day in the House, after nearly 50 years, thank you for your service. I imagine that you are finding that the House looks rather different from where you're now sitting, compared from your usual seat up here. Well, I know how you feel. Standing where I am today for the first time in 6 years reminds me how easy it is to see ourselves as us and them, whereas for the last 6 years, sitting there in the chair, it has seemed to me just to be us. Us, the House, because that's how it should be from the chair. Because it's not the role of the Speaker to create division or rancour in this House, but to seek consensus and to remind us of the things that unite us, all of us, our rules, our procedures, and our precious conventions. As Rosie and Chris have rightly said, and despite what our detractors say, the House of Commons is full of good people. Yeah. Good people. In all corners of this place. Good people who genuinely want to make the world a better place. Of course, we all have different ideas about how we would do that, but even if we sometimes fall short, our intentions are, in a word, honourable. I'm very sad that so many honourable members who I see as I look round have decided to leave the House tomorrow. It's time that someone had the courage to defend members of Parliament, not just inside this House, but outside it as well. Defending members of Parliament, that's what I would do if the House makes me Speaker. Because failing to stand up for the honourable men and women who come to this place to do their public duty harms not only the individual MP, but weakens Parliament in the eyes of the nation. Mr. Clarke, we all know that beyond the Westminster bubble, there's a real anxiety about the health of our democratic system. We need to rebuild confidence and trust in our politics, and it must begin with this election today. There are times for continuity, and there are times for change. This is a time for change. I want to be that change. This is the 21st century, for goodness sake. We need to escape from the overbearing and hierarchical structures that have made it all too easy for a culture of bullying to take root. As Deputy Speaker, I hope that I have always discharged my duties with consistency, with courtesy, and with kindness. I always try to remember, despite being a lawyer, for which you have to forgive me, that we are dealing not merely with rules and laws here, we're also dealing with the welfare of people. That's why the most urgent change that I want to see is making the Speaker more accountable than at any time in our history. And while I'm at it, can I just say that it's not the role of the Speaker to say any more than needs to be said. Nor to take up time in this chamber, especially when that robs backbenchers of their precious allocated minutes. Well, I'm glad someone agrees with something. The Speaker is not the ruler of the House of Commons, but its servant. And it's in that spirit that I ask the House to entrust to me this most historic and special role. Thank you.
Thank you, Dame Eleanor. Miss Meg Hillier.
Thank you, Mr. Clarke. And I think we all know that there is a lack of trust in Parliament and politics right now. Everything from the behaviour in the chamber, the allegations of bullying and sexual assault, and we've had 3 such allegations just since this race for Speaker began, just 6 weeks ago, and the state of politics generally out there in the nation. So the next Speaker has a key role in setting the tone, yes, in the chamber, but also with colleagues in this place who support us in our work and in the country. And I would be a Speaker who spoke less, but when I speak, it will be with the clear intent of standing up for MPs. I think you've heard from other candidates today and at the hustings that we're in broad agreement about how to manage the chamber. We want to be champions, and I certainly would be, of better conduct. I would be an impartial speaker, a director rather than an actor. And we want better timekeeping. UQs and statements are going on too long, and that greater discipline that timekeeping would keep there would also give greater certainty over timing so that we can plan the rest of our lives. And we need an end to the short time limits. I have a track record, Mr. Clarke, of fairness and of delivering what I promise. I've chaired the Public Accounts Committee for the last 4.5 years, where I've introduced a new way of working on the Select Committee corridor. And as a minister, I dealt fairly with all MPs, whatever their party. Because let's not forget, we're all only here because our constituents elect us. So we respect each other, we respect our constituents. It's as simple as that. And some time ago, Mr. Clarke, I was mayor of a hung council in London, where I had the casting vote while also being the first citizen. So I had to handle some pretty difficult situations in a fraught council chamber. But I'm not a grandstanding politician, Mr. Clarke. I would speak little. And as many of you know, I'm incredibly discreet when you come to see me about matters in your constituency. And I would not seek self-publicity, but speak up only for MPs and for Parliament and our democracy. We need better support for MPs. There's too little personal development and careers advice, and that shows up starkly when so many members are leaving with short notice and we have members losing seats. And of course, on restoration and renewal, it was my amendment that moved us forward, so we will be leaving the building. And we need to tackle that, and I'm already working up plans on how we monitor the cost. Of course, that's important. But this is an opportunity to rekindle trust in our politics and our democracy, rekindle how we do things, how we change the culture of this place. And as Speaker, I'd have your back on unfair publicity on expenses. And more than that, I'd work to educate the public about what great work MPs do in this place. And I'd step up the approach to personal security and online bullying, which is leading to too many colleagues leaving this place because it's intolerable. But the main thrust of why I'm standing is the bullying and harassment that is still too rife in this building. It's just over a year since Dame Laura Cox reported. And yes, we need an independent process in place, but we need more than that. Gemma White's report earlier this year highlighted problems in our own offices. There is a good list of MPs to work for and a bad list of MPs to work for. Staff know this. We know this. It may be an uncomfortable message. It may not be a vote winner today, but we should not be complacent even if we're on that good list. We should not rest while young staff in this building are fearful, tearful and afraid to raise concerns about how they've been treated. We need better HR, supported and trained senior office managers, and we need to tackle this now. It has to stop. It's going to be the next expenses scandal, colleagues, if we don't tackle this. We have to lead by example. We have to put our own house in order and call out bad behaviour when necessary, but prevent it before it gets to that point. We do that externally. We need to do that here. I would be utterly committed to this. I've worked up plans, I've talked to staff and unions about how to deliver on this. And we need to work with staff. We can't talk about them without them. We need a culture shift. We have to lead by example. Don't let this moment pass.
Thank you, Ms Hillier. Sir Lindsay Hoyle.
Mr Clarke, thank you. And I will say, as everybody else, you will be missed in this House. But I do know one thing. I don't think it will be the end of your voice. I think your voice will continue to give us advice for a lot longer in time. But of course, a great hero of mine is here today. That is Baroness Boothroyd. She was the White Rose, she was the voice of the North. What the White Rose brought, hopefully the Red Rose will follow. But of course, it is an absolute privilege to speak again from these backbenches. These are the backbenches that matter. These are the backbenches that hold the executive to account. And there has been no better time than the 13 years I spent here, sometimes with the Labour government, and shortly afterwards we saw a different government. But it is about making sure, whoever's in power, that these benches have the right to question and hold to account. That's what matters. And of course, it's about having an accountable Speaker to back that up. It isn't just about the backbenchers, it's about a Speaker that endorses and supports the backbenchers. And that's what I hope I've always shown. During my 9 years as Deputy, I've tried to ensure there is not one part of this House that's not been brought to speak, or whatever size of party, I've encouraged to make sure their voice is heard. And I want to continue to do that. Because it's not a club that says that you've been here for 35 years. Don't take it wrong, Mr. Clarke. The fact is that when I look at 35 years of people in this House, I think I've heard that speech once more and once again and many more times. That speech is important, but the person who walked through that door yesterday is just as important to their constituents. Their voice must be heard as well, and the pecking order ought not to be there. It is about equality. We are all equal in this House when we come to speak, and that's the point that we must retain. And I promise you, that is what I will do. Of course, a Speaker has to be trusted, and hopefully I've built up that trust. It's about having a proven track record, and I hope you would agree that I've got that track record. And when people say, well, I'll do this in such amount of time on Prime Minister's questions, or I will do something else, I have done it. I have been there. And yes, we did reduce the time, because it's not about me, it's about these benches. And that's why you can do it in good time. And that's what I want to continue to do. So when I say I have done it, I've done Prime Minister's questions, I do the budget, I've done many things in this House. But it's all with fairness. And, of course, that's what matters to us all. And, of course, we have touched on reform. We need to continue reform. We need to support people in security. Because I've got to tell you, when I took over security, there were no measures for MPs. There was so little for us, we didn't matter. I hope that people will recognise what I have done and stood up and made sure that we can feel safe. That job has started but has not finished. I want you to give me that chance to finish it as Speaker of this House. And I promise you I will continue to fight to make sure we are safe, our families are safe, our staff are safe, and the House as well is safe. And that's what matters. It's about delivering for all. And I assure you, that's what I will do. It's about experience and drive that I will make sure, as I say, to continue reform for the best of all. This chamber, I believe, is underused. And we ought to seriously look how much more we can get out of this chamber. I think there's great ideas we can come forward to. And as I say, my pledge to you, that this House, I will be here for them and for you, and to make sure you have a Deputy Speaker that can become Speaker, that will not let you down. I will be accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Lindsay. Ms Harriet Harman.
Thank you, Mr. Clarke. These are difficult, even dangerous times for our parliamentary democracy. The country's divided, the House is divided. The public view of this House is at an all-time low. Too often, this chamber descends into shouting and abuse. Relations between this House and the government are broken. Many of us work under a hail of threats of violence to us, to our families, to our staff. So your choice of next Speaker is really important. I know you want a Speaker who will be and who will be seen to be scrupulously impartial and fair to every MP from every party. When I was Leader of the House, I was exactly that. But it's not just about being fair, it's about perception. We can't go on with huge decisions being made by one person behind closed doors. I would reform the Speaker's powers to make them transparent and accountable to this House. And I would be fearless in standing up for the rights of the House. I know you want a Speaker who understands what it is to be a government backbencher and an opposition backbencher and a government minister and a shadow minister. And I've been all of those things. My guiding principle would be that all constituencies are equal. And because of that, all members are equal and owed equal respect. So as Speaker, I would regard it as my responsibility to help you wherever you are in the House and however long you've been here to be the best that you can be. One thing I've not been is a member of one of our minority parties. And that's why, if I was Speaker, I would want a fourth deputy in my team, drawn from the members of the minority parties, so I would have that perspective right at my side. I know you want a Speaker who will help Parliament change with the times. I have fought for and won reform, making our select committees powerful and independent by giving us the right to elect the chairs rather than their being appointed by the whips. I did that when I was leader of the House. Setting up the backbench business committee so we can choose the subject of debates. I did that too as leader of the House. I changed the voting system for election of Speaker to make it by secret ballot. I hope that was a good idea. and just this year, by working with members across parties, getting the right for new mothers and fathers to vote by proxy when your baby is born. So, I'm running for Speaker in these difficult times because I have unparalleled experience and an unparalleled record of reform of this House. But there's one other reason I want your vote. Parliament has changed. It's nothing like the old boys' network it was when I first came in, when I was one of only 3% women members amongst 97% men. Now, there are not just 211 women in every party in the House. Men here speak up for women's rights too. But in 600 years, there's only ever been one woman Speaker. And I don't actually agree with making reference to the gallery, but I'm going to break with precedent here and pay tribute to Betty Boothroyd. Okay. So it's 600 years. 600 years, only ever one woman. There have been 156 men. And this is my question to the House today. Can we show the country we have changed by putting the second woman in that Speaker's chair? Many of you are standing down, some after only a short time here, and that should concern us all. I want to thank all of you who've served in this House, and to say to all of you who are standing down, I wish you well for the future. Some are standing down after decades here, and that brings me to the father of the House, Ken Clarke. Ken, you have been a phenomenal, exemplary parliamentarian, and I just wanted to say that and to thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Ms. Harman. I'm genuinely grateful. I have no idea what voter appeal the very kind words of addressed to me have. But All the candidates have now addressed the House, so in a moment I'll declare open the ballot. Before I do, I have to give a clear explanation of the process, which is not actually familiar to any of us. So, firstly, members with surnames beginning with the letters A to K, inclusive, should vote in the I lobby. Members with surnames beginning with the letters L to Z should vote in the No lobby. Please enter the lobbies by the main entrances, as the side doors will be locked. When you enter the lobbies, please give your name to the clerk at the appropriate desk for the letter of your surname. As usual, surnames have been divided into 3 streams in each lobby. When you pass the desk, you'll be given a ballot paper, and when you've completed it, please place it in one of the ballot boxes at the exit of the lobby. That should be familiar, but I would remind members that they should vote only for one candidate. It's not a transferable vote, it's an exclusive vote. Vote only for one candidate. The ballot will remain open for 20 minutes. I would hope to announce the result of each ballot around 45 minutes after the closure of the ballot. The House will be... That, I think, is for counting and for printing of new ballot papers. The House will be alerted by the annunciator before it's to resume, and division bells will also be rung. So, I declare the ballot open. Lock the doors. The sitting is now suspended. Starting 8 seconds early. This is the result of the first ballot. The total number of ballots cast was 562. The number of votes cast for each candidate in alphabetical order was as follows. Chris Bryant, 98. Ms. Harriet Harman, 72. Meg Hillier, 10. Sir Lindsay Hoyle, 211. Dame Eleanor Lang, 113. Sir Edward Lee, 12. Dame Rosie Winterton, 46. There were no spoilt ballots. A remarkable achievement for this particular assembly. Now, firstly, no member received more than the 50% of the ballots cast, so we proceed to a further ballot. Meg Hillier received the fewest votes, and Sir Edward Lee also received fewer than 5% of the ballots cast. So under the rules, they both leave the contest. Before I confirm the list of candidates for the next ballot, I now invite any candidate who wishes to withdraw to inform me in the chamber within the next 10 minutes. Which means I sit here for 10 minutes waiting for each of the candidates to carefully consider their position and then come to inform me which wish to withdraw from the next ballot, and then I shall make further announcements, and we'll have to have new ballot papers printed before we actually get to the next round of voting. But the present position is the House is now adjourned again, and in 10 minutes' time I will announce the candidates who are proposing to proceed to the second round of the ballot.